So yeah, I'm trying to catch up on the extended, like Cosmere.
Yeah, because a
world.
lot
you were
like
saying.
Hoyd is in there, like a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that is really important to the like wider circle. Also,
Yeah.
we're live. Hi, hey.
Hi.
But yeah, like I read every single one of his books just because I'm like, other than the last two Alloy of Laws I need to get to. But
They're so
like,
good.
there's so much stuff that's like concurrently happening. I don't understand how he does it. Like, he must have one of those crazy people bulletin boards up on the wall, just being like, with like
He Charlie
like,
Days
with,
it. Yeah, and it's just
with
like fully
string
across the
between.
wall.
Nothing makes sense other than to him. Like,
the
it's
crazy
insane.
thing is when we're talking about Brandon Sanderson and his Cosmere collection, but the crazy thing is when he started Stormlight Chronicles, it was supposed to be about Hoyd, and then he realized that he didn't work as the main character in that story, and so he changed it to be Kelsier. But yeah,
he figured that out after he released the book.
No, so there's a book called Dragonsteel, which was released. There's 100 copies out there, and he full on released it and then backpedaled and canceled it.
Wait,
and
you said the Stormlight Chronicles, but then you said
Stormlight
Kelsier.
Chronicles. Or sorry, I'm in Kaladin.
Yeah, Kaladin. Right.
Names.
They're all K names.
Cosmere, we'll get there.
Yeah,
that's right.
he fully launched a series that had the original, almost the beginning plot lines of Way of Kings, and then backpedaled it because he realized it wasn't going to work for the greater story arc. So there are copies out there, and I think you can actually find them online. A lot of people have read them, just because it's got interesting little pieces of information. People like to guess what the future of the stories are going to be based on it. But it's...
I think about him making his own magic systems, because he's made like 6 or 7 at this point.
Yeah.
And like
he literally teaches a class at a university.
How to do hard magic systems. Yeah. And like, thinking about it, the wrinkles in my brain start to smooth out, because I'm just like, I could never achieve, like, it's insane.
I love that phrase, and I'm going to use it.
Please feel free. It's insane. Like, it's just so complex.
So
he has to, like...
Wait, I just have to acknowledge it. We can finish up the magic talk, but I feel like the brain is the one part of our body that we all want to be wrinkly.
Yes. If you have a smooth brain, you're a dummy. Do you know who have smooth brains? Koalas. And they're fucking stupid.
I didn't know that.
So there is apparently, I was watching a video about how there is a natural benefit to being dumb. It's like a survival thing that, yeah.
Do predators just don't bother with you, or?
No, it's like essentially your like life positioning. You just kind of...
You're okay with like mediocrity.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, koalas eat copious amounts of eucalyptus leaves, which are toxic. Eucalyptus is not good for you. It's a poison. It's bad. Like, if you ever had like eucalyptus oil and drank it, it would kill a human person.
It's not
and so they just like slowly over time developed a system for it, but their like gut flora isn't developed when they're a baby to be able to process the bad.
Like, they haven't actually evolved to do it. They have to like learn it.
They have to
each
learn
individual generation.
So they build tolerance by eating the mother's poo. It's called pap. So they basically eat it because it has a diluted amount of eucalyptus oil and the enzyme required for breaking it down, and they just basically like force evolution every generation.
I love that evolution was like, okay, we're gonna make it a thing that, you know, you can eat this. We're gonna make it an evolutionary instinct for your baby to eat your poop so that it can gain it. But we're not actually just gonna give you that resistance.
That'd be too easy.
Like, you have to earn it.
Are koalas now, if I were to eat a koala, would I be right in assuming...
Get chlamydia.
Well, yes, obviously. But would I die as a result of all the fucking... Like, are they toxic? Because, like, if you eat... Because people are bad for you because of all the heavy metals that are built up in us, because we're, like, apex predators.
Because of the prions.
What are prions?
Prions are like a sub-protein that can't be broken down by anything. And every living thing has prions in it. And prions are the main cause of like mad cow disease. And there's like some Dutch name for the like out in the islands.
Cow disease, yes.
Yeah, it was human mad cow disease.
Edward Jacobs.
Yeah.
syndrome or
Yeah,
whatever.
you could probably say because you're South African and Dutch is basically
Same thing.
But basically this dude was studying these tribes in these like remote islands, and he was finding that all the women were going like fully insane, like really batshit crazy, and he realized was because the prions kind of spread out through the whole body, but they congregate majoritively near the brain, and it was a tribal tradition that when two tribes went to war with each other, the winning tribe would eat, the men would eat the heart to be like the courage or whatever, and then the women would eat the brains for the like the wisdom and the smarts. But the women were all losing their shit because they were eating cannibals that had been eating. So like the prion buildup was so bad that it just basically started to shut down brains.
Prion
But
disease is really bad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
It's
really
like
bad.
it's like a full thing, and that's why like mad cow disease happened. Was they ran out of feed for the cattle, so they started grinding up cattle and putting it in the feed. So we started eating
Cows that
predators,
eat
essentially.
cows.
Cows that
Yeah.
eat cows, and that's like you shouldn't eat predators. Like you should never eat like a lion, or it's the same as like heavy metals like mercury. Don't eat the biggest fish because you're going to get the most amount of mercury because it goes up the food chain.
See, this is what we're here to do on chatWater. So we're to teach you, life lessons about what you're supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to eat.
If you're going to eat a predator, eat it once so that you can brag about it, but don't like make a habit of it.
Don't make a long-standing tradition of eating
Predators.
Predator.
There's a
Should we-
question.
What
for me.
about like
And then we're rolling the
plants
intro.
that eat other things? Like if there's like a really big Venus flytrap,
There.
can I eat that?
I mean, it would be the same as like eating something that eats bugs or eating something that eats like birds. It's probably fine, but like the
What if it's a really big one? What if there's a Venus
eating,
man
like,
trap?
like cows.
Yeah, there's a big
Probably not
cow-eating
then.
plant.
It just
Like-
depends on how
like-
high it is in the food chain.
Whatever
I
the
feel
one is
like
from
it-
Little Shop of Horrors.
I feel like at
Yeah.
that point you should be more worried about it eating you than you eating it.
Well, that's why I
Feed
want to
me,
eat it so
Seymour.
it can eat me. You know,
right.
like I'm gonna get him.
That's a
before
point
I
of
get
order.
God.
Okay,
I
let's
would
roll
like
that
to-
intro.
I would like to point out before
Alright.
we roll the intro, Em, that this is
Okay.
the risk of inviting Adam on the show. Is we will inevitably talk about koalas and Australia.
I mean,
We
it's a good thing we're
will-
here to talk about him today, though. So
I'm
it's
just
good.
saying, it's a risk that you take.
Bets in the chat as to which like obscure part of Australian flora and fauna his characters are based off of.
Yep.
And bonus points for like which specific parts influence which specific parts. Okay,
Yes,
let's roll
thank
that
you
clip.
so much. Roll that
Guys,
intro.
Google the gimpy gimpy.
What is?
Hot.
Okay,
Hot
so
take.
the
that
gimpy
tune is
gimpy
so good.
is dendricide.
It's the worst thing in
mordosis.
Australia.
What the
The
fuck?
gimpy
The
gimpy
suicide
is without
plant?
a doubt the suicide plant. Yeah.
Why would something have those two names? The gimpy gimpy is so adorable. The suicide plant I want to avoid.
It has fibrous.
Oh, I've heard of these.
Yeah, it has
yeah.
fibrous silicone hairs that are filled with a neurotoxin that causes a pain that can last up to 10 to 20 years because it just like phantom pains. It just stays within your system.
Oh, we
There was a
love
case. There was a
neurotoxin.
case of an English, I think biologist or whoever studies plants, herbologist, I guess.
Biologists.
But they had sent a cutting of the gimpy gimpy plant to England, and it was like 15 years old. But because the hairs are silicone, they don't degrade. And so he like unfolded it and grabbed it with his bare hands, and the needles pricked him. He got the neurotoxin, and like it's caused people to like try to scratch their faces off. It's caused people to kill themselves because they just like couldn't deal with the pain because it's so
No.
constant and so long.
Oh,
It's the worst thing in Australia. Like everyone talks about tiger sharks and like great whites and like the irukandji, which is also pretty bad. But like the Gimpy plant is the worst thing in Australia,
My
without
favorite-
a doubt.
Well,
My
that's our
favorite-
show. Good night, everyone. Like, good night.
One of my favorite comics was like, I don't know if you've ever seen those ones where it's like God talking to his angel and he's like talking about creating the creatures.
Yes.
And God's like, give him venom that can kill an elephant. The angel's like, well, is he ever going to eat an elephant? He's like, no. And he's like, well, why then? Oh no, just give him venom that can kill 6 elephants. Why?
So
Just
my
for fun.
theory is Australia is the country where like God was making his animals, and then he got like a little board and was like, I'm gonna mix all these things together, and all the angels were like, oh, we can't release that on like the whole world, right? And they're like, yeah, just put it in that one dry, weird island
Over
that no one's like just put it down there. Like it's like a desert. No one will really worry. And then they just kept doing that over and over and over again.
But can we just
Wait. Here's what you're missing, Yanis. Irukandji don't encounter elephants anymore.
Can we just take a second to appreciate the fact that Australia is terrifying and the indigenous people who lived there were fucking badasses.
Yeah.
Because literally they were like, yeah, it's not a big deal. We're just going to live in this place that's completely inhospitable to human life. Like everything can kill you. And yeah, we're just going to make it work. Like that's insane. It's the same with here. Like you think about Canada, right? And you think about the first people who came to BC and like the stories they tell about how many bears there were and like how many cougars they were. And they had guns and like an endless stream of Europeans just coming when new ones died. And they barely made it work. And the First Nations people were like, what about it? Like, we're here forever.
Well,
that's so badass.
The first few settlers in Australia had a really hard time because they were like, we're going to settle. And all the Aboriginals were like, yeah, no, that's
a dumb idea.
Pretty shit. We move for a reason. Like that's a pretty shit idea. You're saying, oh, all right. Good luck to you. Have fun with the snakes and the everything else.
The myriad of list of things.
You mean they're gonna learn where you are? And you're not gonna move,
and you're gonna stay there forever
for them to keep coming back? Okay,
that's a choice.
I never thought of the phrase "there were so many bears," but now that I think of it, you're absolutely right. Like we've got a fair few bears, but back in the day,
nothing compared.
It was literally Bear City.
Yeah,
like
when I go run in the woods, right? And I'll be running, and I'm like, I've never seen a bear in the woods. I'm very lucky. I've also never seen a cougar, but that doesn't mean that they haven't seen me. That's kind of their deal. But when I go running in the woods, a lot of times I'll be like, if there was a bear, I would be so fucked. And not only that, but like you're constantly wet in the winter. Like you can't make a fire. Everything's wet. And then there are like all these predators. I have no idea how people survived here. I would not be able to do it.
I also think of like the Great Plains First Nations people who are they're like, what's our primary hunting source? And it's the biggest fucking animal possible.
Yeah.
It's like 1,000 pounds of muscle that have massive horns and are like always travel in large herds. And you're like, no, we're gonna hunt that massive fucking thing that's 1,000 of them and it will kill you in a single hit. That's what we want.
And they came up with the best possible way to do it. They scared them off a cliff and they all fell to their death and everyone ate super good for like quite a while. Yeah. Like, how do you come up with that?
Okay, last thing, but we got to talk about our fictional world. But I once worked an event that happened at a bison farm and they had maybe 14, 16 bison on the thing. And the whole thing was like, oh yeah, you can look at the bison, but don't go too close because Tatanka, the sort of head bison, is real ornery in his old age. And the fences we have are more suggestions. And if they ever get upset, they can just rip those fences right out. Like those fences are for us. They just don't know that. Like,
oh my gosh.
It was the whole plan was just like, keep the bison chill, and they will be so. But
Bison
like,
are
if
beautiful creatures. They're
right.
okay, now I get to share something because
Yeah,
y'all
go
are
for it.
experiencing. So in in like my elementary school, like grade 7 trip, we went to this like horse ranch up in central BC, but it was like a horse ranch and then also this bison farm. And the bison just ran down a hill from the mountains and they just came to settle back in this paddock. And it was like almost moved like sweet little 13-year-old Emma to tears. And I was like, why am I crying? And I'm 13 years old watching a bunch of bison run into a field. They're beautiful creatures. Absolutely
fucking
beautiful.
majestic.
Who is the
So
first
majestic.
crazy dipshit to ride a horse? Who went, all of these wild animals want to kill us, but I'm going to ride that motherfucker? Like, I think about like the
when-
different inventions and different like steps in technology and being like, how the fuck did they even get there?
My
When-
question was,
Magic.
which came first, riding horses or riding camels? Because like, if you ride a horse, you're like, oh, then we could ride other things. But if you've never seen anyone ride anything, you're looking at a
You
camel,
look at a
and you're like,
camel? That's what
You know
I want to
what would be
ride.
crazy?
yeah.
I bet you that riding of horses and riding of camels happened congruently
Probably.
in different places.
Yeah.
Because shit like that happens all the time. There was a thing that happened in England.
And then
where-
after this, we're talking about our fictional world. Yes.
there's a thing that happened in England.
Maybe
where,
we'll get there.
where
It's chatWater.
crows in England discovered that when they dropped the milk off, like this was back then when milk was still delivered to your house, they figured out they could peck through the foil on the milk and then drink the milk out of the bottle. The insane thing is that crows figured that out in the south of England, and the crows in the north of England figured it out on the same day, with no way for the crows to have communicated it.
Crows are magic, and we all know that.
Crows are too smart.
Like
Too smart.
there's like a
I don't
weird
trust 'em.
hive mind to certain things. Like things happen, like people figure things out at the same time. Like
Crows
Dar-
never forget you. They always remember you.
my dad has 3 crows who he knew the parents. He would feed the parents on the roof of the house. And when the baby crows came, the baby crows like grew up coming to the house. The parents have since died. The 3 crows still come every year. They hang around the house because they know my dad will feed them. They know who he is. When he comes out on the
Of course
roof,
they
they
do.
come close.
They know what's
to get
good.
food. Yeah.
I don't trust crows, dude. Crows, can't trust them.
Anyways,
But you
welcome to
can,
chatWater. Eventually, we get to the show.
Maybe.
Time is it?
It's,
Oh yeah, we're only
It's
17
Ah,
minutes into the
minutes.
stream.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
you know what? Time is relative.
Time's
They
relative.
knew they knew what they were getting into when I was the person on the show. They knew it was
Yes.
going to be tangential.
So we have a special episode because Adam is here, and unlike our previous guests, Adam has actually had 2 characters on the show.
Yes.
Well, 2 characters in the campaign.
Yeah.
One of which that we don't actually know a lot about. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about Torren and the origin of the Blackwater title, I believe.
Yep.
So yeah.
Also,
And
thank
you wanna-
you to our sponsors.
yes.
A big shout out to Legend Craft, who is the fantastic proprietors of all things fantastic and woodworky when it comes to your RPG needs. They sell amazing dice tubes and shelves and tables, so please go check them out, legendcraft.ca. If you enter the code Blackwater, it's 5% off at checkout. And then we also have Silverwing Armory, our fantastic paper products sponsor. If you enter the code Blackwater at checkout, you get a fantastic 10% off. Love their stuff. Please go support these wonderful Canadian businesses because it helps support us and us to keep doing this crazy thing. Also, a big shout out to our dice goddess, Keisha. She and I were messaging today, and I've seen some things that are so pretty, and I'm excited for everyone to see them. Apparently, our dice are almost done, and we will have them in our hands soon, which leads me to another fantastic announcement. Not this coming Wednesday, but next Wednesday, we are showcasing our other Wednesday show. We will be now from every month, we will be showcasing 2 Wednesday shows a month, for the first of which on the second Wednesday will be behind the screen with all of our fantastic lads coming in and talking all things DM. But on the other off Wednesday, so the 4th Wednesday of every month, we are going to be doing a one-shot of some description every other Wednesday. So this month we have invited Keisha, our fantastic dice maker, Reg and Ben from Legendcraft, and Tiana, our fantastic artist, and we are doing a Meet the Makers one-shot run by our very own Tim Carlson, based on some lore that comes from some of the Legendcraft stuff that Ben and Reg have worked on. So we're really, really excited to show that to you guys. It will be live streamed on the, I'm looking at dates here, 22nd. Yep, the 22nd of July, 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. This time, same place. You know where to go. So please come watch that. You'll see it showcased all over our Insta, and a fantastic for our creators to come and talk about what they do. So yeah, that's all the announcements I have, and we get to talk about Adam today. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about Torren and Finin.
So who do we want to talk about first? I guess we should probably start with Torren.
Sure. Yeah. I think what I like is like Torren was the first character that I kind of tried out a new way of creating backstories for characters, because I used to do a thing and like this works for some people for sure, and I just realized it wasn't working for me. I was writing like 5-page backstories all about like where they'd been and who they were and all this stuff. And then moving into Torren, I came up with this concept of like, what is he about? Like core concept, a name, obviously, and like the stats and stuff. And then kind of did a thing called like retroactive backstory, where as the game progressed, I would be like, oh, this is a cool thing that I can build into the story of Torren. So like a lot of what Torren was reactionary to like the story that Tim was telling and the story that like everyone else was telling. And it's the same with Finin. Like I add things in as Finin. If anyone caught this Saturday show, Finin's dislike for the God's Brawl was something I came up with that night, because I was just like, I feel like he would have lived here. It would have been like a very constant thing in his life. And so I just like kind of came up with an idea of like, I don't think Finin would enjoy it because his dad was his dad. And he probably would have had a lot of pressure around like performing and training and being a part of the celebration. So he has like a really kind of skewed view. And that's kind of like how I've been working with Finin, and how I was working with Torren was like a retroactive backstory where like I would be inspired to create new ideas. So like Torren's family came about when we found Jar. Like, because I was like, I was quite moved by finding Jar. And I was like, why?
Let me just stop you right there. As someone who never played with Torren, and if we do have viewers online, which I'm amazed that we do, what is a Torren?
Yeah, let's go back. Go back to the first time we got Torren.
Let me tell you what I know about Torren.
Yeah.
Drunk.
This is how this works. Sean dishes everything and goes.
He was a grumpy lad. He got Steve Rogered in ice and was woken up. Didn't care for the world. And then died because of a big ice monster, and now he's in hell with his family. That is all I know.
All of you.
Canonically in hell.
He's not in hell.
He's in one of the hells.
Perhaps.
Like, he may not be in the hell, but he's in a hell of his own making. Which
I think everyone thinks the hell that they're in is the hell. To be fair.
True.
No one ever thinks that they're like in like the gated suburbs community of hell.
Yeah, no one's like, you're in hell, and he's like, well, technically,
I'm in North Upper Hell.
I'm hell adjacent.
Because Adam, you didn't start the campaign with us. Nope, you didn't start at the very first session. Tell us about you coming in, because I know all the story, but like everyone doesn't, and I know Sean might not know all of it too.
Like how Torren came in or how I came in.
Both. Let's talk both.
I don't remember how I came in. I think I was just talking to Tim and like Tim, Emma, and I all played in a campaign.
Wow. It's a present tense. Don't sass me about it. Present tense.
we play in a campaign, which at the time was playing a lot less.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "Hey, do you want to join?" Or Tim was like, "Do you want to join?" I was like, "I talked to everyone. They seem chill with you coming in," and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." But just due to like the adventure they were on, similar to like how Letters came about, in that like it was we were in a location where you were kind of limited to what you could build. He was like, they're in Caradoc, the ruins of an ancient city that has been like 1,000 years frozen. And actually, like you spoke 2 weeks ago about the Titans.
Yes.
So Caradoc fell to Ishfel. Well, Ishfel fell and then Caradoc fell kind of simultaneously.
So Ishfel fell on the spire, the main spire of Caradoc. It pierced his heart and essentially flash froze, separating Arathis from her body.
So Torren was a career soldier in Caradoc, and he had essentially gone on a like forward mission to try and like figure out what was happening as the like ice like army was approaching, and that mission had gone south really, really badly. Everyone died. Like basically everyone he considered his family that weren't his like immediate family were just dead. And so he found himself on the walls of Caradoc as the army approached, and just realized like his family wasn't in the city anymore. Like they had evacuated all of the civilians of Caradoc, and so or most of the civilians of Caradoc. So he kind of just like a little broken at that point, just a little shattered, and more so than he realized, he wandered away, went to a empty bar, and just started drinking because he was like, fuck it, we're dead anyway. And it was a combination of the fact that he is a monk, so he had like ki and like inner control, but also his incredibly high blood alcohol level that when the flash freeze happened, he wasn't killed, he was just like suspended.
Well, and a little bit of Mama Arathis too. She came in there and helped a little bit with that, because the same sheen that protected you was the same sheen that Nepi clocked with Kokanee. So there was a little bit of
Mommy's favorite.
Close to Mommy's favorite.
Because Torren basically had been training up to becoming an Arathis, like a chosen of Arathis. Basically, people who take those shards that everyone uses in their guns and they place them just above their heart, and that gives them like extra powers,
which we will talk about
momentarily.
Yes.
But so in the flash freeze, he was suspended. And then because what was the time between the flash freeze and you guys? Was like 2,000 years.
2,375 years. Yeah.
So
ballpark.
So like when they kind of wandered into the bar, they found him flash frozen.
Yeah, because we were up in Caradoc, and we had like there was a staircase that had kind of been smashed through in the base of the spire, Mother's Eye, which had been like frozen in ice. So we made our way through a tunnel, and it popped us up in this bar. So we pop up in this bar, we just see kind of corpses everywhere, and then Nepi's taking a look around, and she sees this one like perfectly statuesquely frozen person who's not, there's no decay, there's no nothing, and he has a drink in his hand and he's just frozen. Yeah. And so
they thawed him out, and
Nepi thawed him out,
immediately punched Nepi in the face.
He did. That's the very first thing he did. Punched Nepi in the face.
He was startled. He should be dead. But the other problem that he had was he spoke what is referred to as High Tongue, which was the like common language of the era. But in 2,000 years, language changes, and so he didn't understand Common. He didn't.
It's like a proto-celestial language.
Yeah, it's like
right now, Kokanee, Callie can speak it fluently.
So Adam, so you had an accent, I'm guessing. Could you give us a little taste of what Torren sounded like?
Oh fuck! He was very like Northern England, like
Jon Snow.
Yeah, little Jon Snow. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a gruff.
He was just like a career soldier who'd seen too much. But what Torren, like the Torren and Blackwater, I'd spoken to Tim about this little idea that I'd come up with, where basically in the moment where he saw all his friends died, there was a schism in his psyche, and so there was Torren, who like mechanically was a drunken monk, basically had to rely on alcohol, used alcohol to suppress everything. And then the party quickly learned, as he kind of like was drunk and had punched Nepi cast Lesser Restoration on him, removing his drunkenness, causing him to become Blackwater. And Blackwater was a Kensai monk who was the part of Torren that needed to be ruthless and efficient when coming to killing. So Torren was the like, stop everything from feeling, numb everything, don't think about it. And Blackwater was like, kill my problems, solve it that way. And so Blackwater just left and started running down the street, and then
fucking got us in a fight with an ice dragon.
They found a white dragon, and Blackwater was like, I can kill that. And so he started running down the street and tried to kill it. And they jumped in trying to save him. Yeah.
So mechanically, as a question, mechanically, did you have two characters created for when you were the different things, or did you build your sort of own in between?
So what the way it worked was, just because the split wasn't something he can control, Tim would roll dice and tell me if yes or no, basically. And if he was like, if the roll was good, I would move my abilities to the Kensai, and I would get like Kensai abilities. In this instance, they weren't good, and I just lose the Drunken Monk abilities. So basically, I would just become a monk without a subclass. And so basically, that was like, I think it was like a 20% chance. It was like a D100. It was like a 20% chance that I could retain. I could like move my stats and become a Kensai monk. And so, yeah, that was his like early intro into the party, was getting them into a fight with a white dragon, which they survived. They were fine.
Two of our Nepentha was unconscious for a large quantity of that fight, and somebody else in the fight was unconscious for a large quantity of that fight. It was a tough fight, and we left Caradoc, and then once we found Arathis and we like actually like freed her, she gifted you the ability to speak Common, which was really nice, because
very chill.
Spooky had been doing most of the translating through comprehend languages at that point.
So the way it had worked essentially was Torren would ask Spooky yes or no questions, because comprehend languages doesn't allow you to speak the language. It just allows you to understand the language. And at the time, Callie wasn't with us. And at the time, Kokanee learnt High Tongue because of Torren. Torren gave him a book that helped him learn High Tongue.
Yeah.
Or maybe Callie helped him. Torren gave him a book in High Tongue, and then Callie helped him translate it.
Yeah, because Callie was gifted High Tongue.
Because before you guys came down to Caradoc, she found the thingy.
That's right.
And because it was similar enough to Celestial, it kind of made the transfer.
Yes, that's correct.
But then, the Arathis gifted Torren with like the capacity to understand. And I think like they kind of ran together for a while. They went to
there was some big stuff. Yeah. The big thing that happened in Shinkick was kind of important though, and that's something that I think I know we talked around about what faith forging was a decent number of episodes ago in chatWater. So when the party was, because we traveled, so we met Torren and Caradoc, and then we traveled back down to Shinkick before we went to Faway Tavar, because this is where Nissa was, and we went back down to Shinkick because we were like, this is a bad place, we don't know what's going on, there's some weird stuff happening here with this factory. So we went there, the factory exploded, the elves attacked the gnomes of Shinkick, and we kind of fought our way through, and then that's when Nissa left in the big mech to go crash down Faway Tavar. Which
Torren knew was all Caraxian technology.
Yes.
Like he knew that they'd basically taken his city's technology.
So we were like underground in this this kind of old Caraxian outpost workshop, and Kokanee and Neppy were down there, and that was like the very first time Kokanee prayed to Arathis, and we managed to get some of the shards out of the wall because there was this like blue vein of crystal running through the wall, and we managed to get some of it out before everything collapsed on itself. And then that afternoon, or that evening when we were setting up camp, we actually inserted one of those shards into Torren's chest and did like mini heart surgery, because it was myself and Kokanee and another party member
Yana.
At the time.
Yana was the one to hold me still.
Yana held you still, and then there was another party member who we'll talk about later, who actually inserted it in because they were the most dexterous at the time. And Neppy was basically like, this is where you have to put it. I cannot do it because I'm not dexterous enough, so somebody else has to do it. And Kokanee was praying, and we almost killed him. We were like a couple centimeters away from inserting it into his heart.
And then
would have killed
mechanically
him.
that gave him a level in Blood Hunter, which would later kill him. So that's fun.
Yes. Spoilers. Torren died. But yeah, so then that was a big moment for me with Torren joining the party within a couple days, and we just kind of like, okay, we're all bonded now. We just did heart surgery on you. And
Another thing with Torren,
like
visually, is he in Caradoc with the soldiers, it was a tradition to basically like kind of like Maui to tell your stories via tattoos. So his whole body was covered in tattoos except for the one spot where he had basically saved it, knowing that eventually he was going to get a shard put there. He didn't expect it to be in the middle of a forest at nighttime, but
we did as best we could.
Life happens.
But he was like a Marvel character mashup, right? So he was like Captain America and a little bit of Iron Man in there, and
yeah, that was good.
He never, because like he never had any understanding of how Coraxian technology worked. As far as like he knew how it works, like I know how a gun works. I can't build a gun, like, and I'm like not that good at shooting a gun either. So like he had understanding of like commonplace technology that was in Caradoc, but like he never used a gun. He always punched or spear or punch or spear, one of the two.
Well,
I feel like he never used the gun. He only punched would be a really fun thing to have on your gravestone.
Sadly shot to death.
Oh gosh. And then Torren did a lot with us, like especially as we were hustling through Fawe Tavar, and as we were making our way towards Wolfreen for the eventual like showdown at the Gatestone Keep. Torren was so key in a lot of those battles. Yeah,
I think Torren, like what Torren was good at was being a soldier. Like he was an infantryman. He was like a footman. I think it was in Fawe Tavar where like his fighting prowess very much came to light, in that the way like Drunken Monk works is you can redirect attacks into enemies. So like if someone misses me, you can make that hit someone else. And so there was a period of time where Nissa was on like death row, was about to be executed. Spooky banished her. And then everyone was like, go kill those people. And basically Torren and Kokanee stood in an alleyway and went, yeah, come kill us, as the others like found a place to hide out for a bit. And basically what that looked like was Torren catching arrows before they could hit them, and then Kokanee doing like his action surge, stabbing everyone in existence. But like he is such a good crowd fighter. And so yeah, that was one of the first instances where like Torren was like, yeah, this is what I do. This is my life. I punch 7 people all at once because that's what I've trained to do my entire life. And it was in Fawe Tavar that we found Jar.
Oh, sweet baby.
Who you've talked about on the show, correct?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. But tell us Torren's experience with Jar, because you were the one who found her.
Yeah. So Torren, we were crawling through the sewers, and they'd found like a room with a skeleton, and then Spooky brought the skeleton back, and Torren was very much like pretty much from the get-go, I was like, Torren feels out of time. This is weird. This is like, it's like Captain America, but times 2000, because he's so out of time. Like it just everything feels off. And so he very much like was a like run in, gun in kind of boy, where he just was like, I should have died. Like I'm on borrowed time anyway. I'll be first in. I'll make sure that things are safe. If I get killed, that's fine. Fate was delayed, but that's fine. And so I was scouting the tunnels, and I found a bunch of like really rudimentary traps that were like very easy to dismantle. And so I just like avoided them all. And then I found Jar, and I think she tried to shiv me.
No, she was scared.
No, she had a knife. She like had
she had a stick.
She had a shank. Yeah. And she tried to use it on me, and I just disarmed her, and I was like, no, thank you. But like, I just like took her stick away, and I was like, hey, what are you doing down here, you tiny, tiny child? And she had a big burn on the side of her face. And we found out later that fucking the dickhead that was Zacchus had gotten mad at her, and she explained the whole story to me. And so I was like, you wait here, I'm gonna go get some others. I got the others, and we got Jar out of there.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment where I was like, Torren was a family man. Like Torren was a guy who was like in his late 20s to early 30s. Like I didn't really settle on an age for him, but he was a guy who has had a couple of very young kids, was kind of the height of his military career, and then everything went to shit. And so that was like a really precipitating factor for later events where I was like, oh fuck, Torren had a family. And then that led me down the road of like, that would suck really badly to know that your family like grew up, like your kids became adults and then died. Like they had their whole lives, and like he was thankful for that. But the idea of them, like him surviving that so many years past the fact that he just had no way of like looking at their legacy or seeing what they did was devastating to him. He just like couldn't come to terms with it. And so it was actually at a thing that I called Mumsions and Dadgens.
Oh.
Was a one shot that I did while my parents were in town from Sydney, and we basically did a game of D&D with my parents playing for the first time ever, and they actually really enjoyed it, which was exciting.
It was so
good.
fun. That was such a fun night.
Emma was playing, and everyone was leaving, and Emma was still sat down because she was like, she's very lovely, always helping like clean up and stuff. And I took her aside, and I knew,
fuck me.
So before Wolfreen, I'm trying to think, you guys plane shifted to Wolfreen, right?
You had taken, we bounced up to the Earth plane and then down.
There was a reason though that we couldn't take Jar. It was like it wasn't safe or something like that. And so Torren was like, I'm not leaving this little girl.
Yeah.
I will get her.
It was you and Nissa and Neva. And Neva.
And I was like, I'll take the girl.
And you guys rode
as far as we can. We just rode
those
as hard
horses.
As we could.
Yeah.
And I was like, we got to a crossroads where like it was Svelin, like you could go to Svelin or you go to Wolfreen, right?
No, it would have been you would have been like traveling down. I'm so sorry. I'm just like looking up at the map trying to figure out where you were. You're traveling down from Faway to Var. There would have been like a path that, I mean, Tim can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but you could probably ride down the coast to Wolfreen, but it's kind of a one-way shot.
Right. I think what it was we got to the city and saw smoke. And so Torren went to Nissa and Neva and said, take Jar, go, don't mess with the city. And then he got his bag and put on his Corexian armor, which he'd never worn. It was like proper like soldier's armor. It was all decorative because he doesn't wear armor. He was a monk. But basically he just walked into the city to face whatever the city was. And while they had teleported in, they'd gotten in like 10 hours earlier.
Yeah.
And so they dealt with a whole bunch of shit, which I'm sure you guys will talk about at some point.
Yes.
But from Torren's perspective,
at the Battle of the Docks?
No.
No. Okay, that's why.
No.
Yeah.
So from Torren's perspective, he got to Croden's Cross, which is like the poor district in Wolfreen, and he had basically found the whoever had survived and was like mustering whatever resistance. He got them all together and like Captain Torren took over, where he was just like, this is what we have to do. This is like, these are the things that we need to find. And so basically he mustered the remnants of an army, delivered a very quiet, because we were the baby volume, but a rousing but quiet speech, and then basically led them into battle, where he then reconnected with the
party,
rest of Blackwater.
Because we were Blackwater at that point. Because so what had happened? So we had come into the city as Adam said, and we had gone through. We had a fight down at the docks with another of the agents of Chaos, Delnus Deeprun, and then we had I think there was a session where we played and you played Torren, and then the rest of us played like Nissa and Neva and a couple other fighters. That was so fun. That was a fun session.
Thad and Chad, I think it was.
Thad and Chad, yeah, that was right. And we played just some fighters, and you guys just dismantled a bunch of rock elementals or earth elementals and salamanders and
salamanders,
stuff. So then we all convened at the Temple of Cord.
And that's where that session ended. And so the Mumsions and Dragons happened between that session and the next session,
because we were playing weekly at that point.
I pulled Em aside, and as Torren said,
this was at Adam's house, like the night, like a day or two before the session was going to happen. And Adam pulls me aside. He's like, Torren needs to talk to Neppy. I was like, what do you mean Torren needs to talk to Neppy? And I was like, for Adam. And he's like, no. He's like, we just need to do this. I was like, okay. So
he pulled her aside.
Yeah.
He pulled her aside in universe and said, if I die, let it be. I know you can bring people back, but like, if I happen to go down, I have a family that I want to see, and I know they're with Arathis in hell. And and so he's basically like, but do not resuscitate, essentially. He was like, if I die, if I'm dead, died, not bleeding out, but like dead, please do not bring me back. And then the night...
And Neppy was not okay with that whole thing.
Yeah,
she was not okay. She was pretty wrecked about that whole thing.
And then actually it was almost ritualistic, because the night that we were going to play, my hair was like super long, and my dad's really quite good at cutting hair. So I was like, can you cut my hair? And so he shaved the sides of my head first, which is Torren's look, was shaved sides of the head and long on the top. But I had to go.
We'll post art of Torren on the Instagram.
Because we ran out of time, so he couldn't cut the top of my hair. So I was like, fuck it. And I just like pulled it back, like exactly like Torren, not meaning to. And then in the fight, a few kind of key things happened. I activated my Blood Hunter ability, which allows me to do fire damage on my spear, but it made me take my level in damage, and my hit points were reduced by that. So I think it was 8 at the time.
Yeah, we were like level 8 or 9 at that point.
And so I did 8 damage to myself, and the creature we were fighting, this like chaos elemental, was immune to fire.
I feel like I should grab the mini. I'll grab it. You keep talking.
It was immune to fire, acid. It was like immune to all of the like 4 elements essentially. So that was just a waste. Pointless. And then Spooky put haste on me, and so I would do my flurry of blows, and then as my hasted action, I would do defensive stance.
Look at this thing. There is like, and if you look at it, there's like, I can't do it because of the light. There's like swords and like visions of little people inside. It's like,
a joke, mini.
Yeah, I think when Tim bought this, he was like, you have to leave the store for a couple of minutes. You can't be in the store while I buy this.
I miss minis, man.
Oh gosh, me too.
But so yeah, he just kept patient defensing, so he just didn't get hit. Like he was fighting really well, and I was like max health other than the damage I'd done to myself for probably 80% of the fight. And then things looked like they were getting down the wire. We had a couple people who were like
almost
not
down.
Doing well.
Neppy was almost down. Kokanee was almost down. Kamea was down.
Yeah.
Kamea was out.
And so I was like,
in that fight too.
Torren was like, the extra damage is worth the risk. He didn't patient defense, got hit a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then Spooky got shot with a crossbow bolt, where it was actually like a ballista bolt.
Yeah.
Which broke her concentration. Haste dropped, and he was stunned. And so again, second round, massive damage. So I'm like hovering near the end, and then Callie flew up to Zakis, got to Zakis, stabbed him in the back, killing him.
So good.
But a mechanic that Tim had put into place was Zakis was linked to the Chaos Elemental. Yeah. And basically when Zakis died, it would do a bunch of damage to itself and a bunch of damage to everyone around it.
Just like almost imploded and then exploded. Yeah.
So it, as a reaction, did a bunch of damage to itself and to everyone around us, which knocked me to 0. So I was down. and then it died. And another mechanic that it had was when it died, it exploded. And so it exploded, and I got hit with a rock because I couldn't succeed my dexterity saving throw. So I failed 2 death saving throws. And then I rolled right there and then because I knew my turn was next, and everyone was like dealing with their stuff. And I rolled, and I handed the box to Tim, and I rolled a 3. But the thing is, the damage that the initial explosion that brought him to 0, it brought him to like -2. So if I hadn't of used my spear, if I hadn't done my like blood hunter thing, he would have survived that initial round. The boulder would have knocked him to 0, and then he would have failed a death saving throw, but had 2 rounds to be fine.
And I was up
so
after you. I was up right after you in initiative
yeah.
order. The one time Neppy's ever been decent at initiative in her whole fucking life, and I
So
was gonna come get you.
As she got to him, he was just dead.
He's gone. And she, in that moment, like had diamonds in hand, and like Kokanee rushed over and was looking at her like, and so what she had done is she basically like almost fell on top of him as he like died in her arms, and she was like had diamonds in hand.
Right, because he like Tim gave me like last words essentially, and like as Neppy got to him,
oh my god, I'm gonna start
as Neppy got to him, Torren was like, "It's good, leave it, it's fine."
And so like
I'm good with this.
And Neppy just collapsed, like weeping over top of him. And in that moment, she took 2 coins and salt out and basically cast gentle repose on him to suspend him so that the party could come over. And like Emma was weeping. I was like, there was some gross crying sounds coming out. Like Len was in tears, Jen was in tears, Tim was like tearing up. We were all like, everyone was really upset. And then like Kokanee basically said to her, he's like, you're gonna bring him back. You can bring him back. And I was like, I can't.
Because at this point, like none of them, like the players and the characters didn't know that Torren had this conversation.
And then Neppy was like, Neppy said to him, like, I can't be selfish just because I miss my friend. And then basically in that moment was like, say your goodbyes. Like, and then she took the coins off the eyes and let him go.
Stopped casting gentle repose. Man, I like, I'm not someone who cries easily. I teared up during the session. I remember getting home, and because I was like, my parents had rented this place because they were staying there for like 2 weeks, and I was like staying with them because they wanted to see me, because they don't see me they see me once every year or 2. And so I got in, went to this like room that I was like unfamiliar, and I just lay down on the bed and fucking wept. Like I just was like fully lost it. Like I'd never lost a character before. And I remember because I walked in and my dad was still up, and he was like, "Oh, how'd it go?" And I was like, "It was fine." I just like went to bed. I was like fucking wrecked. I was devastated. Like
it was one of them. Yeah, that was like,
it was crazy though, because it was like I'd rationalized it in my brain. I was like, this is a choice that he would have made. And I was like, I'm okay with it, right? Like I felt fine about it. Like if he dies, he's dead. Like that's the choice he would have made. That's something he would want to stick by. And like, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 sessions. Like we had Finin in the game.
Yeah. And
I was like, I want Torren back. I was like, I can't do this. I need Torren back. Like you can bring him back now because she got the 10-day spell, the raised dead.
So basically after that, what had happened, like Neppy had essentially given him like a very precursory last rites, and was basically, oh gosh, what did she say? It was in that moment, I was just in my midst of my tears. It was quite beautiful what I said. I remember it was like,
it was a really lovely session.
Thank you. Yeah. And it was just like, High Priestess Nepenthe, she with eyes that shine, release you, Torren Blackwater, the last Caraxian. May Nepthisicate guide your journey, and may Arathis welcome you home, which is what I said to him in that moment. And I was just weeping with like Len and Matt's arms were around me, and I was crying because it was so wild. And I think about that session so much when people ask me, like me personally, Emma, why do you love D&D? And I'm like, that Sunday night in my living room is that like a story that we tell together can reduce what was there, 8 of us in the room at the time, to tears.
To tears, yeah.
Just all of us weeping. And like that, yeah.
I realized I was like grieving like it was a real person. Because I got to a state where I kind of hardened up and I was like, it's fine. I had my cry, it's good. And then like the next session I brought Finin in and I played Finin and I was like, yeah, I'm a new guy, it's fine. And it would have been like 6 or 7 sessions in, and I was like, I miss there would be like little things where that someone would need to know information about the Dawn War, and I was like, Torren would know that because Torren was there. And I was like, fucking what? Like, why did I let this happen? Because like it felt so much like my fault because I'd made this fucking character choice. And I basically had to just go through the fucking stages of grief and like actually accept that he was gone and just like let it go. Because there was a few conversations I had with Matt and with Emma being like, we could bring him back still. Like, it's not a permanent thing. Like, if we have to, like,
to be fair, I did give you the out, like, because it was 10 days that I could have cast Raised Dead on. And I gave you the out like 3 or 4 times.
I'm not gonna lie, it was a real temptation.
Because there was like a bunch of times where we were bouncing in and out to the Earth Elemental Plane, and then there was one session where Kokanee had been reading, or Kokanee was like, we need Torren's spear. Like, we need Torren's spear. And we were like, well, we buried it with him.
When Torren died, before Torren had died, he'd given Kokanee a journal, basically like telling his story. And in the front of the journal, I actually, I created, so I was at work and I was trying to like send this message, but I just wanted to send it to Matt and Len, because Len was going to translate for him. And I remember I was just bored. I had a lot of free time. And so I made a Facebook account.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
As Torren.
Oh my God, I remember that.
Sent them the message.
And it was like, and like, while you're looking that up, like Kokanee had, because Nepi had essentially started last rites with him and was like, we took him to the temple of Nepthisiket because there was no temple of Arathis at that point. And we like Nepi started doing like, okay, we're going to do, because she and Torren had, despite the fact that the very first meeting is he punched her in the face, like she was quite fond. She was very fond of him, and saw him as quite a, like, trusted him, and they were quite good friends. And especially with everything that had happened, she was like, no, he asked me to do this. We are going to do this properly. If he would like, if this is what he wanted of me, then I'm going to make sure that I do this properly. This is, he asked me and I'm honoring his choice. My choice to give him this honors his choice. And then she stopped in the middle of that whole preparation and was like, oh my gosh, I am completely stepping on Kokanee's rituals of Arathis. And she was just like, please take over. I'm so sorry. And that was like one of the first times that Kokanee had ever done any sort of rituals for Arathis. And we buried him on a hill overlooking the ocean. And he had a Kreger carved a headstone that looked like a cog. And on his headstone said, Torren Blackwater, husband, father, friend to more than he knew. And that's what's on his headstone. It's very close to where the new Temple of Arathis is.
He did have a lot of illegitimate children.
Yes, absolutely. Friend to more than he knew. Father to more than he knew.
I created a thing, and I called the group chat Torren's book, and I said, Dear Kokanee, likely I know reading this will be, I know reading this will be likely painful for you, as there is only one reason you would be reading it. But though I understand the need for grief, please don't let it consume you as it once consumed me. Enclosed in this book, you will find what rites and prayers and rituals I could remember for the worship of Arathis. I apologize that the breadth of both my knowledge and memory are so limited. I am also sorry that I couldn't see your journey with Arathis to the end. I truly am. But it brings me such hope to know that despite my death, the knowledge of Arathis goes on. Let her guide you through this time and through your life in whole. You are the best and most deserving high priest I have ever met, and I feel a great comfort knowing the future of my people rests in your hands. For though Caradoc is gone, it shall forever live in the hearts of those who follow Arathis' path. So, Kokanee, first of the new Caraxians, find our people and help them as you helped me. For you helped fix a small part of my broken soul, and if you can do that in a short month, then you are truly capable of great things. Be strong. For our people, they will need guidance in those early years, For Neppy, who I asked of so much and gave back so little. For Callie, though I only knew her briefly, I saw a bright soul filled with love and compassion, and they often are the ones who are hurt the hardest, and often silently. For Jar, every little girl needs a father or something close to it, and I wish I could be that for her, but I am selfish and weak, and I have kept my own children waiting far too long. And for yourself, you are a good man and deserve a good life, and take it from someone who spent a large portion of theirs shackled by grief. It's no way to live. I hope you will find a way to forgive me eventually. I hope you will find a way to let me go. Take my spear. It is a tradition amongst my comrades that the weapon of the fallen be carried by those left behind. The walls of Caradoc flew proud, the city's banners held aloft by the spears of the fallen. I know it is selfish of me to ask you of anything, but please do me this honor. Take care, Kokanee Buckwild, and thank you for helping me regain a piece of myself I never expected to reclaim. With regards, from your friend, your comrade in arms, your brother, Captain Torren Blackwater of the Silver Wolves.
Yeah.
And so that was why
Beautiful,
they had to
man.
go get the spear.
So we dug it up in the middle of the
So they
night.
dug it up.
Neppy and Kokanee dug it up in the middle of the night
Fucking
and had a
grave robbers.
no. It was reverent. We had a whole conversation, and in that moment, I was like, I think it was like myself and Matt, because we were like, I was like, we have 2 days. I was like, you have 2 more days to decide if you want me to bring him back.
And that's why Torren is in hell, because his grave got desecrated.
Oh my gosh.
That is why that happened. He was on the track for the high.
He saw his
line.
kids like reaching down to him, and then as
Yeah.
they put the shovels in, he was like, "No!"
There was
The
actually
shovel literally like separated his hand. It was like,
speaking of
"Oh!"
beautiful moments, when we buried Torren,
Did you see Torren when you briefly got thrown into the abyss?
oh, into the abyss?
before
No,
Letters
I
slapped you
didn't, because
back
he's
out?
not in hell.
Because I feel because Callie did. She buzzed the tower. Like she got thrown in. It was only one
Oh
round,
my
but
gosh.
Torren was there, and because she could hear him screaming.
No,
And
do
she
you know
was
how
like,
I know
that
Torren
scream."
is with Arathis? Do you know how I know that? Because when we were burying Torren, we were like, Kokanee essentially had, fully shoveled the dirt in, headstone, and we were basically, all of us at that point were standing around, like saying last words and saying goodbye. And at the very last moment, like, Neppy offered a prayer and she stood up, and I think only she saw it, only Torren's spirit rose out of the grave, passed through her, and she like turned around, and like she saw very briefly, her and Kokanee, I think, actually saw Arathis like welcome him.
And a vision of Wolfrine.
And a vision, and then and then Kokanee saw the vision of Wolfrine and what it could be. But like, it's so interesting. I think we were talking about this the other day. The utter gap that Torren left in that party was,
and
huge.
he'd only been with him for a month. Like it had been such a short time. But like in real world, I think it'd been a year that I'd been playing with you guys and playing Torren.
It had been just under 6 months that you'd been playing with us. Yeah.
It was longer.
I think something that was like, it was a hard shift having Finin come in, for sure. I think because the group was still mourning, like we were all still mourning Torren's loss. And that was really hard to parse out. And as we were walking down,
I was also needlessly cruel with my character creation.
Before we get into Finin,
yeah,
I think there's something that you skipped over that is important. The character was called Torren Blackwater. Our party is called Blackwater.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for that. How did that happen?
So we were walking down the hill, away from Torren's gravesite, and we were wrecked. Like, we were utterly wrecked as a party. Like, in my mind, we're walking down the hill, we're like covered in hints of all the elements. Like, Neppy was at 12 hit points or something like that, and we were just all just utterly wrecked. Kokanee would have been like, in Torren's grave, or in burial ritual, like, he had been painted with gold paint with all the symbols of Arathis. Kokanee was like half covered in gold paint. We were all covered in grime and dirt and muck from this fight, and we wandered down the hill and into the city, and people started cheering for us because we had this battle, and folks kept asking like, who are you, what are you called? And I think that was one of Tim's impetus to be like, what is your party called? And we had been, as a group, in our group chat, just throwing around some random names for the group. And then I think it was Neppy who basically just looked at this random person who asked, and she said, well, we're Blackwater. And everyone was like, yep, we're Blackwater.
Mm.
And so
yeah, we'd had like a 2-week discussion about party names, and fuck me if that didn't make me like nearly tip me over the edge. That's because I was just sitting there like, I'm dead. And then everyone was like, yeah, they called themselves
I was like, well, if you're gonna ask Neppy the alt like that, then she's gonna do everything she's gonna do.
So technically all of this falls under my IP, so
yeah, great.
have to ask what were some of the runners up for party names?
I for the life of me can't remember. There was a bunch though. I'd have to go so far back into it.
Give me a moment. There
was one that I was like vehemently against.
What was that? That's the one I think it was.
We were going to call ourselves the Strays because we kept picking up strays.
That was the one that I didn't like because I was like, it's not evocative at all.
There was something about the word errant, like ERRANT.
Oh yeah,
the errantry.
Errantries, yeah,
the errantries. Yeah.
Because it was a play on the fact that we were like errant and ran around, but we had
just been tossing around, and nothing seemed to nothing was just like yes, nothing fit.
Yeah, Blackwater is better than those,
right? And then we walked, and then it was in that moment I was like, oh my god, we're Blackwater. Mm-hmm. And then that was when Kamea, we were walking through the city, Kamea met us. Well, we'd obviously met Kamea before, but she was like, where are you staying tonight? And we're like, we don't know. She's like, you're staying at my house for a couple days, and then we stayed with her for like 2 months before we got our house.
I remember when I showed up, I didn't understand that was the dynamic. I was like, oh, this is your place.
Yeah, we don't live
and I was like, sick. And I think I built a fire in the backyard or something.
Yeah, and we were
and you're like, this is not our home.
Neppy was just
I also brought a bunch of dogs.
Oh my god, I remember that. Finin just brought a bunch of dogs.
Brought a pack of dogs over.
A pack of
and
wild
was like, I love
dogs.
this. I've never seen dogs before.
And
are they smart like us?
Dogs. Yeah.
There was just so much of Neppy just sitting at Kamea's dining room table being like, Kamea, I'm so sorry. So sorry. And it was just and that, because I have to kind of not hand it to Torren, but Torren dying, that was that night was when Neppy told Kokanee she loved him. Because she was like, well, I can't lose somebody else.
And then Kamea otherwise also start.
Oh, they hooked up that night for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's when
Torren
they
is
hooked up.
a love maker. All you have to do, guys, if you want your friends to fall in love, just die horrifically in a battle against a giant chaos elemental.
Your two fave Blackwater couples started that. That was the impetus that night.
Because Nepentha could finally put out of her mind the idea that she would end up with Torren.
Yeah, that was.
I feel like there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of tension between Nepentha and Torren. I'm just saying, he was the first Arathis guy that she met, and he was the one who told her DNR, and she was all like,
"Oh, that's really, really romantic."
She does have a
conversation.
She's done heart surgery on him.
He punched her directly in the face as their first interaction.
For sure, her type.
Romance, baby.
Adam, I just realized this. Neppy has done surgery on both of your characters. She's done surgery on both of your characters.
The second one wasn't a choice, though.
Tell us about Finin. Well, speaking of sexual tension, tell us about Finin.
Yeah, Adam, tell us about how we met Finin.
Finin was a choice. Finin
was a choice.
Very much so, and more so than you realize, because I thought there was going to be a period of time between Torren's death and Finin arriving. And so I came up with a concept of because Torren had delivered this big speech in front of the city and led them to battle and then died, there was this kind of cult of personality around the idea of Torren, kind of young gun kids trying to live up to the ideal, being he was the last of his kind, Harrison Ford.
Wait, why Harrison Ford?
When Harrison Ford came out as Han Solo, everyone wanted to be Han Solo, my dude.
Okay, because Han Solo was the last Corellian.
He was the last Corellian, and he was badass, dude.
I wasn't. No, he wasn't.
He was now.
He was to Corellians what Gimli is to dwarves, but that's not important. Please go on.
Hot
There's a
takes.
cult of
Continue.
personality.
Wow.
Please
Oh,
continue.
come on.
Adam.
Like Gimli isn't the dwarviest dwarf. That's even in the fucking books canon that Gimli is the best dwarf. Not to mention design-wise and portrayal. Like, all dwarves are derivative of Mr. Davies. Sir Davies probably playing fucking Gimli. Anyways, that's neither here nor there.
I was a big
Torren-
Gloyan fan.
What? You fucking... Really? You
We are
read The
coming
Hobbit,
apart at
you're
the
like,
seams.
oh, I love
We're coming
Gloin.
apart.
Like, one of... Look, okay.
I read The Hobbit
okay.
before I read Lord of the Rings.
No. You shut the fuck up, because there are fucking 13 dwarves.
Yeah.
No, yes, 13 dwarves in The Hobbit. 11 of them have no character. There's fucking the fat one, and then there's
Bomba.
fucking Thorin. Yeah, Bomber, the fat one, then there's Thorin. That's it. And you're
There's also
coming at,
Philly and Killy. Don't you fucking dare disgrace Philly and
And
Killy.
Gloin.
They gave their
No.
lives
Look,
for the cause.
shut up. Know that there's more dwarves. I can name all of them. That's not the point.
chatWater,
The
we're
point
never
is,
gonna get
if
there.
you
We're
read
never gonna
the
get
fucking
there.
Hobbit, there's 13 dwarves, and fucking Tolkien is interested in like 2 of them and the fat one. Like, no one's like, oh, tell me more about like Oin. Like, you weren't reading the Hobbit. Like,
I was
oh,
just gonna say
Gloin's
Oin is my
rad.
favorite.
Yeah, fuck off. All right, fucking. Look, okay, here's the fuck. Okay, look, the Hobbit movies were a disaster, but if you want to watch like the greatest part of the Hobbit movies is behind the scenes of just the first one, where they're like, how do we give 11 hobbits who didn't have a character in the books a character? And they were like, oh fuck, what's Gloin's thing? Gloin started a fire in one of the scenes in a cave. It was like a throwaway line. That's one of his characters. Like fucking. How fucking dare you, Yanis, say that you liked Gloin? You were indifferent towards Gloin like all the rest of us until you found out that fucking Gimli was related to him, because Gimli is iconic. Gimli's the one we love.
We
I'll
found
accept
out
Bomber.
When I read
Sean
Lord of the
Defner's
Rings and I got to
Yeah.
the part and they're like
Core.
Gimli's son of Gloin, I was like, shit, I know who Gloin is.
Yeah, you know who he was, and now you like him retroactively.
I like
Right?
Durin.
Tell us about Finin.
Tell me
Finish.
tell me what you know about Durin, Adam. I would love to know. Big Silmarillion fan? Big Silmarillion fan?
You know,
I have read the Silmarillion a
do you
few
know?
times.
Do you know
Yeah,
that
tell me
thing in the
about
chat
Durin.
where
No,
everyone's
no, Em. No, Em. Go ahead, Adam. Tell me about Durin. What do you like about Durin? Hmm?
I love
What
his
do you-
manly beard.
Got a manly beard. The day is named after him. You like Dane? Do you like Dane while we're at it? Who do you like more, Dane or Durin, and why?
Oh God.
You've broken me. You've
The
broken
only
me.
dwarf anyone gives a shit about is Gimli for a reason. Fuck. Sorry. Okay, go
Okay,
ahead. I'm done.
So essentially, I made Finin
Oh
as a
my
character.
God.
Oh fuck me.
So we've truly found Sean's like core crux of being.
That's his whole personality.
that's
Is he
the whole
likes Gimli
thing.
more than any other dwarf.
No,
And
no, you don't. Look, I've had my soapbox. I'm gonna step off of
I
it.
feel like this is that moment where everyone says in the chat, "Oh look, Emma's so hopeful." There for a
Next
moment.
week we're gonna touch on elves in the Lord of the Ring universe.
No, don't get me started on elves in the order. No, I'm just kidding. I love all the
Perfect.
elves
We're
in
gonna
Lord of
watch
the Rings.
Sean and Em go at it about
Look,
elves.
I'm happy about. Look, we're here to talk about our fictional universe, not Mr. Tolkien. Sir Tolkien. I imagine it's Sir Tolkien's
Sir.
universe. It's got to be a Sir. at
Adam,
this
tell
point.
us about how Finin joined the party.
So I created
Please.
Finin with the mind of a young lad who had fought
Oh
during
my
the battle
God.
of
Gatestone
Gatestone. Had fought during the invasion, and at some point had like basically here's the kind of little snippet that I came up with for, because it's really hard to write a backstory for a 15-year-old kid. So again, I kind of did the thing where I was like, I'll do it retroactively. And so his backstory was essentially the period of time over a day where he kept saving people during the invasion. He would like find a group of people who were about to get attacked, and he would like fight to protect them. And in his head, he just kept repeating one more, one more, one more, one more. Like he just needed to save one more person, one more person. And that just kind of drove him through the night until finally it just like, it wasn't enough. and he like was surrounded and about to die, and he kind of reached out blindly and was like, help, one more person, I need to save one more person. And the person that the entity that we refer to as Dave, who was his first patron, which was a I can't remember what they're called, it was a type of angel, basically bestowed him
nice
gifts. Yeah, kind of a dick angel. Bestowed him gifts, and he like survived the day and went on to fight. But like he had been in the crowd when Torren had delivered the speech, and my thinking was there'd be a bit like there would be a chunk of time between Finin joining, Torren dying, and so this like kind of group of kids that were like idolized Torren had popped up. So I designed Finin around that. So he like shaved the sides of his heads and like wore his hair like Torren, and like had a spear because that's what Torren had. He also used a spear most of his life, but he like really was like, spears now, swords are stupid. And so when they first saw Finin,
Callie and Neppy were out on a walk.
I described him as Torren because he was backlit, they couldn't quite see his face.
Neppy like fell to the ground. She thought she saw him. She was
for a brief moment.
Was down on her knees.
I was like, he's tall, sides of his heads are shaven, it's pulled back into a top knot. And then you step forward, you realize he doesn't have a beard. He's like got no tattoos. He's like fresh faced and young.
Which ripped my heart through my chest because I thought there was a moment where something had happened and Torren was back. And I was like, there was a part of my heart that was like so full in that moment. I was like, he's not gone. And like Neppy was just like this is like the work of the gods, like something has gone so right, we did something very right. And then Adam stepped forward and said it was young, and I was just like, ow. my whole being hurt. Yeah, I was like, yeah, here's a knife and let me just twist it and pour some salt in it. Like
in designing Finin, aesthetically I kept them similar because I was like, that like for that payoff basically, for that little like bait and switch,
because you're evil.
Like,
yeah, because like, for the pain for the rest of the party.
Personality wise, I did as much of a dynamic shift as I could. So like Torren, really wise, really tired, not very personable, like seen too much, was kind of done with the world, high wisdom, low charisma. And so I just flipped that with Finin. Finin was fucking naive. He was like excited to see the world. He was an optimist, but he was kind of stupid. So like his wisdom was really low, but his charisma was 20. So he was like, hey guys, like it's me. And one of the first interactions he had, because he's just like fucking, they asked him how old he was, and I think he said 18.
Yeah,
I think he like fully lied.
And Neppy fully knew. She was like, he's not.
And then he was 15 when they met him, but he never referred to himself as younger than 16. It was always 16 was like the most he would give. And recently he started doing that by saying 17 because he did turn 16. And so this like bright-eyed kid turns up, and there wasn't a time skip. I thought there would be. But like the session I came in on, expecting there to be like a 2 months time skip and then I'd be introduced, Tim just like introduced me and I was like, oh, fuck. And so it was like 2 or 3 days.
It was the next day.
Yeah, it was the next day after Torren's death, which like I didn't know. Like I didn't expect that. And so it was the next day after Torren's death, and I was like, oh, I'm just fucking in it now. And Kokanee
was livid.
Took him outside and was like, fight me. Fight me. I'm not like, and like Finin just wanted to meet them. Like my idea was like, I wasn't going to try to have Finin like join them. He just wanted to meet them, and then like he would slowly get kind of absorbed in just by like the nature of D&D. And Finin just wanted to meet like his heroes. And Kokanee was like, we're not taking you anywhere unless you can prove that you can fight. And so I had mechanically designed. I'd use the feat Crossbow Master, which allows you to make ranged attacks within melee range, not at disadvantage, and Eldritch Blast to basically be, he thought he was a paladin, and he basically could like hit people with his spear and cast Eldritch Smite through it, and so you wouldn't have disadvantage on the range attack, and it would just, I wasted like 2/3 of that feat because I never used a crossbow. But like for the no disadvantage on range, I was like, I'm down for it. And so Kokanee was like, drew his sword and was like, fight me. And Finn was like, okay, and cast Armor of Aoghanis on himself. And Kokanee hit him and didn't do enough damage, I think, on both hits to get him out of his Armor of Aoghanis. I think I had 2 temporary hit points left, and he took 50 or 40 damage because he took 2 Armor of Aoghanis hits. And was like, ugh! And then Finn went, should I? And just like hit him with Eldritch Blast. And like Kokanee again was like, ah! And he was like, all right, you can probably handle yourself. Because Finn was like, I'm here to fight.
I am actually at the end of that fight, Kokanee just like threw his sword in the ground and walked inside. It was not,
so
it
mad.
was, he was angry, and
Yeah.
Neppy was upset and was like, can we just not do this now? We literally buried our friend yesterday. Can we not, meet someone new and then maybe try and kill them in the street outside of Kamea's house? Can we maybe not do that? And that was a time. And I think one of the things I remember about Neppy meeting Finin was that first initial shock about him looking so much and acting so much and emulating Torren, which was very hard for her. And then also this piece of like, he is a boy. It was like, we can't do this to a kid. And that was hard. And there was
look at him, he's so fucked up.
And and also there was the bit too of like, there was a moment where it was she and Callie who had met him in the street. And he had basically he was like, oh my gosh, you were from the battle, like you knew Torren. And we were like, yeah. And we were just like out for a walk, and we just went around, and he just kind of followed us and hung out with us. And it was that one moment where Neppy was like, wow, this young person is not looking at me like I'm going to fall apart, because everyone else felt like everyone was going to fall apart, or like Neppy was going to fall apart because of everything that was going on. So yeah, she didn't mind the someone having like confidence and being like, oh, you are this, you did what you're supposed to do. Because Neppy thought that was her prophecy. The whole thing with like the gates don't keep, she was like, that's her prophecy. And then it was not, obviously, but like it was hard. It was hard to meet Finin. Yeah.
But I think that reaction, that like it was almost by design to have. I wanted Finin to feel like an outsider, because like even after 2 months he would have anyway, and I was expecting the 2 months, so it was even more exacerbated by the fact that it was the next day. But I think that reception is what made him. It's almost tragic, in fact, that like he really attached himself to Letters when Letters joined in, because Letters was also an outsider. So they like went and hung out by the beach, and they like went to the drum circle and took drugs. He didn't take drugs because he's a responsible young man. And they adopted like 30 street dogs, and they did all this stuff together. And then they went back to the Earth Elemental Plane. Finin fucked up.
We should talk about that. We should talk about that.
So whilst in the elemental plane of Earth, we encountered a large quantity of Petch slaves. And Finin's like, at his core, is an idealist. Like, the right thing should, like, we spoke about alignment during the GM, the behind the screen, like the right thing always has to be done kind of thing for Finin. And so the party had discussed, they were like, we can't take any more Petch, which for like a 15-year-old didn't make any sense. Of course we could take some with, like, there had to be a way to fix this. And so he was like, if they're not going to take the Petch with them, I will just stay behind and do what I can to protect the Petch. And so while they were casting Plane Shift, he pulled his hands away from the spell, thinking that it would send everyone away and he would stay and he'd like figure out how to protect the Petch. And this is where like it was a rare instance of like my character not knowing something and me not knowing something, or like not expecting something, because like in my mind as a GM, I would have just sent everyone else away. But in the spell description, it's like you form a circle and that circle like remains unbroken and you get sent away. And so in breaking the circle, the only person who was affected by the spell was the person who cast it, which was Kokanee.
Because
so
Kokanee was using the Shard of Grumbar
at
that point. because we
And
had
so-
bamfed in using the talisman. We had to essentially, we were like, we'll bamf in with the talisman, we'll get out with the Shard of Groombar. This is fine, because the Shard of Groombar like would let us only go to the Earth plane, whereas the talisman we could kind of go to all the elemental planes. So we had used the talisman to get in, and there was like a bunch of people had kind of switched around holding the talisman, and somehow I think Kreger had the petch because, or had the talisman because he'd got us into the mine, and you and Finin had gotten the talisman off of Kreger, and essentially was like, I'm going to take this, and you were going to sleep the night there and take more petch.
No, I'd been wearing it for a while because it was one of the like reasons why I broke my hands, was because Tim looked at me and I had to make a saving that I like rolled a wisdom saving throw.
Okay.
So like I was like Finin failed to not stay basically. So he'd had it for a while, like it had been influencing him, but that was the like chaos shard. The Shard of Groombar was what Matt was using, or Kokanee was using.
Yeah,
and so but like
Kokanee was just gone, and we're all just standing there, and like this is us in the room again, in my living room, just being like, what just happened?
And that's where we ended the session.
And that's where we ended the fucking session.
And like you like what happened after that, it was all like kind of history. But I think the thing that like was most impactful on Finin was Letters met Clack. And all of a sudden, it wasn't Finin and Letters, it was Letters and Clack. And like Finin, I think still to this day, feels like the one guy outside the circle, or at least for the longest time did, because like it was Neppy and Kokanee. It was like Spooky and Kokanee have a history. Spooky and Callie and Neppy have that like trio of friendship. And then Callie has Kamea outside. And then like it was Letters and Finin for the first little bit. Like they were the outsiders, they were the new guys. And so Finin like kind of boyishly attached himself to this cool minotaur who could like bend fire. It was sick. And they like chilled by the docks and had really good times. And like Finin showed him water for the first time. He showed him an ocean for the first time. And then like Clack turned up, and Clack was like this kind of sidekick. And I think Finin kind of was like, oh, I'm not needed in that dynamic anymore.
I think one of the things that is probably one of the things that I just regret having played, and one of the things that I've learned through playing with this group, which is one of the things that I most regret about having played, is Letters. Because when you're talking about, you know, fucking Finin being all about like what's good and what's right, and looking for the greater good.
I am still listening, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know you are. Letters and Finin were really close, but it became stark that they had deep philosophical differences about what was important, and we just never dug into it. And that it's something that I've kept in my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm really proud of Letters' growth, but it's like it's all up here, and it's not something that happened at the table. And so, like, just especially at that time, like, Clack is hilarious because it's Tim, and we all love Clack. We all know that Clack is great. But
Clack's great.
When Finin decided to, put everyone at risk for the sake of Petch, which especially at the time, Letters was, like, not about, because they were, you know, disposable. Like that sort of started driving a wedge, and then there was the meat factory, or what was it called? The meat caves?
The meat prison.
The meat prison.
Yep.
Which was another one where it's like, oh, we value two very different things, but again, it never happened at the table, and so I guess a lot of that has remained unresolved.
Another moment like that was, so we were down underneath, there was mind flayers everywhere. We had freed a prison of like people who had been kept prisoner by mind flayers. We'd like successfully cured some people from ceratomorphosis, which is the process by which mind flayers recreate
it's a
themselves.
$10 Scrabble word. It's a $10 Scrabble word.
Basically, they insert a tiny little squid creature into your eye hole, and then that squid creature crawls into your brain, and then it eats your brain, and then your fucking face turns into tentacles.
You just get the tentacles.
But we had done this process, and we'd met this fucking like weird little, I think it was like a gnome mind flayer, who he was an Alhoon, which Alhoons are basically mind flayers that retain a part of themselves. And
his name isn't Skrillex, but it's close.
Zelix.
Zelix, yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And they retain like a part of themselves, and all he wanted was to like he like hated the
That he was
mind
a mind
flayers
flayer.
as
He
much as
hated
he
that.
hated that he was a mind flayer. He hated the mind flayers as much as we did, and so we were like, oh, we're gonna join you. And he wanted to go down this thing immediately. And Finin
To
was
go
like,
get the Elder Brain.
Yeah, he was like, we've left all of these very like all of these people who cannot protect themselves. They like point in case they couldn't protect themselves, they were in here in the first place. And he was like, we've left them, and there is one place in this area that we haven't searched. Just let's clear it out first, and then we can do this. And Zelix was like, no, I'm going down now. And Finin was like I was also a little taken aback, where everyone was like, yeah, let's go with Zelix. And Finin was like, why are we choosing the fucking he was a real dick too. Like, he was an asshole. Why are we choosing the dickish mind flayer over the people we've just saved, including like some members of Spooky's family, I think, like, or like friends of hers? And I was like, all we need to do is clear it out, make sure it's safe, and then we can go down and deal with the rest. And like Zelix was like, no, I'm impatient. And everyone was like, yeah, let's go with Zelix. And so Finin couldn't, like, that didn't make sense to him. He was like, the people first. We can go down and kill the fucking Elder Brain, but we need to make sure those people that we've just saved are safe.
There were also, I will say, in extension with that, there were also a bunch of fighters and soldiers that had been they had been equipped, and there was a couple soldiers there too. But yeah, I totally see that.
We'd equipped them with like roughshod shit, and they were soldiers who'd been captured, so they probably weren't that good anyway. And so Finin was like, I can't agree with this choice. I can't choose Zelix over the people. And so he was like, I'm going to scout out this one section of town that we haven't scouted out yet, and then I'll catch up with you if I can. And this was, I think we were talking to Tim on behind the screen about this moment where Tim had kind of pre-planned this area and didn't pull his punches, which I'm down. Like, that was a great choice. But in this area were 3 mind flayers who quickly attacked Finin. I actually managed to save every time against the wisdom saving throw, which was very difficult because my wisdom saving throw was quite low. So I was never stunned, but one of them crit. And whilst I was grappled, and like carved my brain out.
That's when they brain rip you.
Yeah. Finin died, like dead died. And I'd not made a deal with M about leaving him to the dead. Too. So basically Finin had a horse. I think we've had him on stream before.
Shadowfax.
Phantom Steed.
My Phantom Steed, which I got from the staff of Relalvin. And Shadowfax I'd sent before I got back. As I was dying, as I was getting attacked, I was like, go. And so Shadowfax ran and got the others.
Whinnied
really, really loudly.
Yeah.
As it dissolved from the spell being lost from concentration. And so the rest of the party came, they killed the mind flayers, and they brought Finin back.
Well, we should probably talk about how they brought Finin back first. So when we killed the mind flayers, we realized that, so I had a good long think about this while we were doing this. And I was like, okay, we're not going to get to him within a minute. So hi, Rogue. So I obviously can't cast Revivify. Another thing about those spells is if you don't have all the body parts, it doesn't work. And I was like, oh, they ate his brain. So we got to go get his brain. So we killed the mind flayers that were there. All 3 of them, which was a difficult fight. And then we had to figure out which mind flayer ate his brain, because we couldn't let any of them get away, because I was like, that's on the one chance that his brain is in one of those stomachs. So we killed the mind flayers. Neppy and Kokanee essentially got to work and were like opening up mind flayers. Also, if I'm going to put a little bit of a content warning on, mute, like turn us off for like maybe 2 minutes while I tell this if you are in any way squeamish about body stuff or medical procedures.
And we'll give you a thumbs up.
We'll give you a thumbs up when it's done. So Neppy and Kokanee essentially opened up these mind flayers, and we're like, wow, mind flayer anatomy is not similar to most humanoid anatomy. Let's find what we think is a stomach. 2 of them were had nothing in their stomachs, and then the other one did. So essentially, Kokanee and Neppy, using one of Kokanee's shirts, strained out his brain parts from this mind flayer's stomach, and then spent about an hour putting his brain back together in a way that fit. And that was fun. So we did some brain surgery, and then we closed everything up. And then we just did a bunch of praying. Everybody did some praying. And Callie, I think Yana was basically
I think we're past the
here.
squeamish part, right?
Yeah, we're past the squeamish parts now.
Past the squeamish part.
And Yana was basically like, listen here, pal, you're gonna come back, because she was part of the ritual to bring him. She was, listen here, pal, you gotta come back. Good timing. And then Kokanee was like, please, like, we need you back. You've got to come back. Or no. Callie was like, it was Yana, Callie, and Neppy who took part in the ritual. Neppy was like, your mom would have been really proud of you. Please come back. We need you. Callie was like, I want you to stand up with me at my wedding. You have to come back, because she was going to propose to Command when we get back.
Also,
and Yana was like,
Finin had like a ridiculously and very unsubtle crush on Callie.
Oh yeah.
She was a really pretty lady, and he's 15.
Tall, pretty lady. And so we managed. I think we managed to bring him back. However,
a little bit of dwarf.
There was something, they were like, when they were putting brain bits in, they noticed one piece was like a bit different, just a different color. And we were like, yeah, we're not taking that part out. It's going to go in there, and that's where it looks like it goes. And so we brought him back, and I don't think you like recognized what it was for a little while. But it was the ability to speak or understand Dwarvish.
And stone cutting.
Yeah. And then we brought you back to the kind of like meat prison place where all the soldiers were.
And it was at this point where I like, as Adam, kind of needed to take a sabbatical from, we were playing every week.
Yeah.
And I was playing pretty much every week with Yanis and Sean. We had a group together. I was playing every week with them, but I was running it. And then I was playing like another game that I was running, but like I think it was alpha campaign. It was intermittent. And I was burnt out. I was like, I'm just kind of done with D&D for a second. And so I was like, I need to take a break as Adam from this. This is a good moment. And so basically Finin left. He just went, they went to deal with whatever was down there, and Finin just left, and then spent the next 6 months just traveling the countryside, kind of trying to help whoever he could, like basically dealing with like first level party problems, the local troll or the like little gang of goblins, basically like sorting these things out for little towns all along the countryside, and then returned for Callie's wedding.
Yeah, you showed up like 2 days before Callie's wedding.
And then, to be honest, I think like everything else is basically, anything else of import has basically been on stream.
Yeah.
My question about Finin is, because when he started out, you were saying bright-eyed, basically made it like, well, it wasn't your decision making him, but it's what happened canonically. Heard a speech from a guy and basically, yeah, I'm going to change my life. Like, made a very like impassioned decision.
Yeah.
And
which he often did. Yeah. He made a lot of bad, impassioned decisions.
And now, he was 15 then, he's 16 now. How has Finin, because also mechanically he's changed a lot, but how has Finin the person changed? I think we're coming up on a year.
That he's been with the party?
Yeah, right? Like we're almost there.
It's over a year, because Torren died in the 27th of Corshanel in 2375.
It's been enough time has passed for
it's been a year and a bit
for character change.
Yep. It's been a year and a bit.
When I made that shit up about being in the thing the previous year, that was obviously wrong then.
Well, that could have been while you were away. The 6 months that would have encompassed while you were away.
Has it been 6 months? That timeline doesn't work out because it hasn't been 6 months since Callie's wedding.
Yeah, it can't have been 6 months.
No. But like there was like, because we got back
Wait. For the question at hand,
it works. It works time-wise.
Okay.
Just trust me, it works.
Sure.
Let's say you've been here for ballpark a year.
Yeah.
That's a large amount of change for anyone at that age, let alone someone who's, jumping planes and dying and stuff. How has Finin changed? Full stop. You answer that however you want.
Great question, Sean.
I mean, a big moment. I think, I remember, and I think you and I had this discussion, Sean, after it happened, was Finin came back from his 6-month walkabout, and there was a moment where a character was like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to rush in, I'm going to just do it. And Finin was like, take it from experience. I've done it enough times that I know I'm not going to try to stop you because I've been on the other side of this enough to know that it's not going to be in any way effective. Just be careful. Because I've done it enough where I've kind of fucked things up, not being careful. And that was a moment where Finin kind of self-actualized that his actions, if he ran headfirst into danger, Blackwater would follow him. And so if he did stupid shit, he was endangering his friends. Whereas before it was I have to do the right thing regardless of the risk to myself, and never really thought about if he put risk on himself, he put risk on others. So that was a big change. I think he's also less confident since joining you guys. He's had a lot of bad experiences. It very much shows his confidence when he's talking to people that he needs to get a job done, he's pretty good. But when he's talking to random people, all the moments where he's not a gravel boy, that's that I think is basically small term PTSD of him just being because when he first joined you guys, he could talk anyone into anything. He was smooth as fuck because he was just really charismatic and really confident in what he was saying. But as that's progressed, he's a little more halting, a little more hesitant, just because he realizes now that his words have power, and he worries that he doesn't want to misuse that, and so it makes him kind of hesitate. And then when he's high on temple fruit, he does the world's greatest body roll of all time.
Honestly,
and
it was legendary.
That's the thing, is that's the power he has. He can change people's lives with just a good body roll, but he can't use that. That's abusing power.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Without trying to assume too much about his character, do you think it was after his walkabout that he transitioned from? Because it sounds like when you first joined the group, it was very much you guys are my heroes, I want to live up to you. Whereas the Finin that we've seen in the campaign is okay, you guys are my heroes, but you also need to listen to my point of view.
Yeah.
Finin's very much trying to be I have things to contribute to the group. I feel that's his sort of internal struggle of take me seriously, I'm not a child.
Yeah.
And do you think that happened post walkabout, or do you think that's something that's always been there?
I think it happened during, while he was the only person who could solve the problem that these people had. And they weren't hard problems to solve, but he was the guy. He was the one person who could do it because there was no one else around. But it was also it's a matter of Finin for me was almost an homage to modern day pop culture worship, where Finin idolized someone he didn't know. Finin put this this person who he had seen speak once on a pedestal and was that's everything a man should be. He didn't know Torren. He didn't know that Torren was a broken man. He didn't know Torren was a functioning alcoholic. He didn't know that Torren wasn't happy and chose to die. Essentially was yeah, just let me die. He didn't know these things. So his image of Torren was a hero who gave his life for the greater cause. He did something that was self-sacrificing and selfless for the better of others. And that's all Finin could see was this tunnel vision of you do good no matter what. You have to do the right thing, even if you die. because that's what Torren did. Torren died so that others wouldn't. But he didn't know Torren. Like, and almost by proxy, he had these emotions towards Blackwater, being like these heroes. They fought with Torren, so they have to be like as good as Torren. And then bit by bit, that got chipped away by him being like, that's not the choice that makes sense to like my image of Torren. Whereas Torren was he was a pragmatist. Like, yeah, try to save people, but like he wouldn't have pulled his hands away. He wouldn't have gone searching that town. Like all of those choices that Finn had made that like kind of led the party into shit, Torren wouldn't have done because Torren understood war. Torren understood people die. That's a price. Like he understood that like everyone has their part to play and you just got to play it. Whereas Finin has this like idol worship, or had this idol worship of Torren, and like this false narrative that he'd created for this like hero. And like it was very much me looking at how like movie stars and pop stars and stuff like that, how people create these narratives about these people who they're like, they talk about them like they're their best friends, or just this like sense of knowing someone that isn't necessarily earned, because like I know a lot of people that I've like talked to in person and I don't know them that well. Like, and if you've never talked to someone in person and you've just seen like what they've done, what they've portrayed, that's the other thing is like, this is a great example. Laura Bailey, wonderful woman, I assume. Again, we're talking about, but like from all that I've seen, she seems like a really awesome person. She was receiving death threats because of a character she played in a video game. And that to me is like such a failing in understanding reality. She was working. She was paying bills that day when she voiced the character who was then graphically designed to do the thing that you're mad about. That wasn't Laura Bailey. Laura Bailey didn't even write the fucking thing. She just made a voice. Like, she made mouth noises and you're threatening to kill her. And I think I saw a couple that were threatening to kill her kid. That's fucked. And so like this idea of like reality loss between people you know and people you are aware of was very much influencing how Finin was originally.
I cannot wait then. And I guess we shouldn't even comment on, I shouldn't even say anything. But, you know, after some time has passed, because we're going to get into some trouble. We're going to get lost in like the astral sea for 10 years. Who knows?
Oh my God.
We're going to come back to Dresda, and the like organization that you've started, we'll see what their feelings towards Finin are, and
100%.
Finin's relationship with that.
Yeah, it definitely will be interesting. But I think he'll have a very great, because like he experienced it from the other side, so he should have a fairly like, me thinking ahead and thinking like how like Finin is now, because like Finin now from when he started Chalk and Cheese, because yeah, there was that 6-month period where he like did the like, he never earned the hero, he never earned the like level 8 that he started as. He fucking asked for help. He was given it. He was given far too much power than a 15-year-old kid should have. So he never did that like level 1 to level 8 experience, which like mechanically is a thing, but like that's how a lot of parties grow. I think about how the difference between this is a call out to this campaign, Kale and Vinton, Sean and Yanis and Sean's characters respectively in the campaign that I ran briefly for them.
2 years.
Not briefly, it was 2 years. But how Kale and Vinton, because like Kale has some Finin-esque elements to him. He's a young kid, naive,
actually,
kind of.
We played
like,
a very similar character.
That's why I made the joke when Kale first came in. Like Finn was like, "Oh, he's kind of stepping on my brand." Because in reality, Kale came first, and like I just never considered how similar Finn was to Kale. Like Kale had been a character for like 2 years before Finn existed.
Young upstarts.
And so they have like a lot of similarities.
When I first built Kale, his whole thing was the fact that he'd never seen a different race. So
Yeah.
for like the first couple sessions, it was
He's,
like
like,
an elf
vaguely
would like
racist.
blow his mind. He'd be like,
Oh
holy
God.
shit, it's an elf. I've read about these. I've
I
never
forgot
seen one
about
in real
that
life.
choice. It was
And
so
that's-
Oh
good.
gosh.
The best part is like Vinton was an
Yeah.
old he was like Torren, like this old craggly world-weary dude that was pretty racist against elves, didn't like elk sniffers. And he came up with a list of elvish slurs. It was
Knife
very
ears.
inventive and also somewhat
No,
concerning.
I didn't come up with knife ears. Elf sniffers, I did. I've never been prouder of a slur
elk
than
sniffer.
elk sniffers.
But
Oh.
but like the characters they were when they first started were one thing, and then they changed so drastically from level 1 to I think you guys ended up at like level
It was
9 or so.
12?
9 or
No,
so.
12 or 13.
I think it was above 10. It was like
Oh,
12 or
yeah.
13,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the difference, even like from 1 to 6, that difference was stark.
Mhm.
And so Finin never had that. Finin was just like level 8. And that was so like his journey had to occur in the time that it took him to not level up, but just like to do the things.
So do you think that and this is without giving anything away or putting expectation on a character, do you think he's going to have like a crisis of faith, or do you think that's kind of what we've seen this last little while with his sort of like he kind of got in not a fight but like a tiff with Ralavin about
Yeah.
they just took away the vision? Like, do you think he's going to get to a point where he's like, this is all bullshit, like people aren't as good as they claim? Like, do you think he's going to come to that realization? Do you think he's kind of already gotten there?
I think sadly that happened off stream because
Okay.
that was he accepted, like he wasn't blind. When Finin first started, he wasn't blind. And it was because his will, who we lovingly refer to as Dave, was like a real piece of shit. Like whenever he would step out of line, he would blind him, which was why when Tim fucking said that Ralavin blinded Finin, that was like a knife in his gut, because like the reason why he left Dave was because he was abusive. He was a bad patron. Like he would make him blind. Finin thought about praying to Arathis while they were at Torren's grave because Kokanee was like, if you want, thought about the idea of it. Dave made him blind. Like super, super mean guy. And so when he had the chance to switch to Ralavin, he was like, yeah, this makes sense. Ralavin like stood for a certain thing. And so like that crisis of like the person that is dictating and giving me powers, like they're giving me powers, but with the expectation that with expectations that I can't fulfill. And basically I remember like Torren having a conversation with Dave and being like, it's not a good fit. Like, why would you choose me? I'm an idealistic kid. Like you want someone who is like stuck in their ways. You want like a 30-year-old paladin who hasn't known anything else and like is very dedicated to Paylor. You chose me, who like skipped out on Sunday school. Like weird choice, dude. We shouldn't do this. And so he went with Ralavin. Dave made him permanently blind, like burnt his pupils out. And then Ralavin was like, I've got these magical goggles that allow you to see. And so that was very much like a crisis of faith. And then, yeah, when Ralavin kind of like left Finin, that was a moment where Finin was like, because like what Finin was saying was he was like, Finin felt justified in being upset, and he just wanted to take a second to be upset. And when Ralavin was like, I guess I expected more of you and blinded him, Finin was like, so I don't ever get to mourn. I don't ever get to grieve. I don't ever get to be sad. I have to be perfect all of the time. Like it just felt so heavy-handed to Finin. He was like, what the fuck am I doing then? Like I'm not allowed to feel things. I'm not allowed to like be mad at a decision. I'm accepting the decision. I don't necessarily have to like it. And I just need a fucking minute to myself to sit down and think about it. Like to just get my head around the fact that we're doing this. And like the fact that it was like so harsh, so immediately, Finin was like, fuck it. I don't care. Doesn't matter. We're going to the fight. We're going to the fight anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. Like I was going to do it regardless. I was going to do it if I could see or not. But Ralavin forced my hand. Fuck him. Fuck everyone. I'm just doing this. And so that was very much a moment where Finin was like, I'm on my own. Nothing is permanent. I can rely on no one. And like, that was a pretty harsh moment for Finin to be like, I like an island being like, I'm on my own. This is it. And like he went into the fight thinking he was going to die because he was blind.
Yeah,
he just expected to die.
The interesting thing is regardless of everything you've talked about like his abusive first patron, and then his issues with Relavin and feeling like he belongs and all this stuff, it seems like the one constant though is his unwavering desire to do what's right.
Yeah.
So like regardless of like you take his vision, he's still going to do what he thinks is right. Like it's that's what I think is like really interesting about him, is he has this, regardless, like a lot of times like paladins draw their codes of what they think is right from their god, like like clerics, like they have religious things that sort of designate to them what they believe, and he doesn't really have that. He's just kind of like, I've decided what I think is right, and so I do that. And there's no book, there's no handbook, there's no rules, there's no nothing other than his own perception of it.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, like, speaking of like an abusive patron, he also had like a fairly abusive dad. And that's, like his dad was like, you need to train every day, you're going to follow me into the military, and it was like very harsh. And then his mum passed away, and his dad just like all of a sudden was like, from the perspective of like a novel, I would write the lines of like, every time I look at you, I see her, kind of thing. Like his dad is purview of Tim because he's an NPC, but from my perspective, his dad kind of hates Finin because he just serves as a reminder of like the woman that he loved.
We have seen Finin's dad at the table, and it is heartbreaking to see Tim, who is so lovely, be just a like emotionally abusive piece of shit. Because I'm like, oh no, Tim, you're so good at this. This hurts me. Like, I want you to be worse at this.
Which is wild too, like when like I can speak as Tim's partner, and also what a fantastic father Tim is. It's just like, like, and of course that comes with Tim's training and his ability to kind of step into characters. But yeah, when we weren't there, like the characters weren't there, because I think that night that we saw Finin. So Finin's dad had come back from the war. So when everything went down with Zacchus, essentially what happened is, very long story short, and we'll get to it, chatWater, we'll get there. People from Wulfrene, the queen Thalia was assassinated, and it looked like Mara N, King Everard's daughter from Svel N, had assassinated her, but really it was someone disguised as Mira, and it wasn't. So the Wulfrenian army basically sent a bunch of ships to assault Svel N, and Finin's dad was on that envoy and came back from war, essentially.
Because he's a high-ranking officer in the military.
Yeah.
So Finin grew up like a rich boy. Like Finin.
You got a nice noble house of House Aodghanis.
House Aodghanis.
But his dad came back pretty, essentially with what would be symptoms of PTSD, and also very like, very, those harshness seemed to be very much turned up a notch. And like it was because none of us were there. We had like, Neppy had walked Finin home, I think, one night, and he was like, I don't need you to walk me home. She's like, that's too bad, I'm gonna walk you home. So she walked him back to his house, and then like that scene happened afterwards, and I was just like, I don't like Finin's dad.
He's not a good dude.
Not a good dude.
He's not a good dude. But like I found like I don't have any experience with abusive parents. My parents are fucking wonderful. Like I love them to death. But I've had a few friends who've had like kind of shitty parents or just like shitty experiences, and I found that there's this like, I don't know, I would call it like the rubber band effect or something, where sometimes the shittier the parents, it's not always the case. There are exceptions to the rules, but sometimes the shittier the parents, the better the kid is. Like they're just like, because they're exposed to all this shit, and so they're like, I can't do that. I have to be as opposite of that as possible. And it's
I could talk like, your ear off about that.
Yeah, it's like it's and like I think that's kind of where I wanted Finin to come from, is he's like
anything to not be his dad.
he doesn't hate his dad because he doesn't want to hate someone. He just doesn't want to be anything like his dad. He doesn't want to be anything like the people that are. That's what I remember. Can't remember what the precipitating like thing was, but there was one thing where he like, it might have been after the fight with his dad, but he just went down to Croden's Cross and like bumped into a dude, and the dude was like, "Oh, what you fucking want?" and like tried to start a fight, and Finin was like, just put his spear down. I was like, "Yeah, let's go," and just like
that's exactly what happened.
A bar brawl and just beat the shit out of a bunch of people because he's really strong and like fast, and was just like and then he was so ashamed of that because like he that's like he feels like he should be better than that. Like he abused the power that he has to take out his anger, and so that was like another really like, it was such a small moment at the table, but like for me, I just was like, he's so mad at himself for that.
Isn't that always the way though, that there's might be small moments at the table, but it's huge character moment, and it's all that stuff that's going on in here about like, you're like, I've had a couple of those recently where it's been like small moment, and it's just like, whoa, let's just like delve deep into that and what's going on there.
Well, I think about him going to Trix.
Yeah.
And like that, he's not over. Like you, like everyone was tried placating words and stuff, but like he's 16. He's 16 and he wasn't there when you needed him, and people died. Like that's all that matters to him. He fucked up. So like it was interesting last session that the two sides, the warring sides of like him really not wanting to be in the city, but at the same time he can't leave. He's not allowed to leave anymore because the last time he left, people died, and that can't happen. And so like it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here, because this is a character changing moment. This is like the same as like his brain getting eaten, or him like there's key moments I think in Finin's story where I'm like this is where Finin's going, and then it'll happen and I go, oh no, because like the Earth Elemental Plane was one where I was like, he's gonna stay behind, that's fine, and then everyone else got like stuck behind, and it's his fault, and then Kokanee got fucked up and it's his fault, like stuff like that, where it like that made him kind of go, okay, I can't do that anymore. And then he was like, I'm going to scout ahead. I'm going to scout alone. There's nothing, like, I'm not putting anyone else in danger. And then he died and put everyone else in danger. And like that skewed him again. And then he just was like, I have to leave. I can't be in this group. And I think like, to be honest, like by no fault of the other characters, 15-year-old Finin in the group was toxic. Like that was incredibly unhealthy, because after a little while, once Finin showed that he was capable, I don't think anyone forgot that he was 15, but there was a lot of moments where they didn't treat him like he was 15. He was just a member of Blackwater, which like he wanted, but like developmentally, that's not healthy. To just be like one of six, I can count, shut up. I know numbers. One of six, like
you might want to
saving...
recount. I think you're forgetting a member of Blackwater.
Clack, one of 7.
Thank you.
Who's
one of 7 world-saving heroes, and he's 15. Like that's too much. That's too much for him. So that like 6-month period was also a good moment for him to just be like, I saved a town. I saved like a merchant on the side of a road from like 4 goblins. I saved like a group of goblins from a town that was like too aggressively expanding into their forest because it's like their natural land, and fuck those guys. Like he got to be small time for a fucking minute before going and saving the world. And so I think like a big part of his character development is realizing that he was too deep. He was way in over his head and just needed to fucking not be for a second. And even still, like he's in too deep. He's still in too deep. He can't meet a nice girl and spend a nice evening with her anymore. People die. There's like he can't have the experience that like a normal 16, 17-year-old will have, because the world is at stake now for him. Like every little mistake he makes will be so, like from his perspective, could be earth-shattering. And so like I think like he is a very like mentally unhealthy person.
Just don't
'Cause
go
he's
like just don't go like book 5, book 6 Harry Potter on us.
What does that
'Cause
mean?
I don't. Is there? What
Book
is Harry
5,
Potter
book 6
do?
Harry Potter was just like a really like a shithead.
Oh, he's just kind of
He
dick.
was just like
I don't really-
He went
super
from like sad to like I'm an asshole.
he was like
Right.
angsty and like this is too much pressure and
See,
I
I don't
can't
think-
deal with this and
I don't think Finin has it in him, and I don't think like I have it in me, because like Torren was as unpersonable as a character as I could play, and like I don't think Torren was like a dick. He was grumpy,
He was like a Brillo. He was abrasive.
yeah, but like, and that was a challenge because I just love people. Like I just want to be like, hey guys, I'm involved. Let's have fun. And like as Torren, I had to be like, man, I'm gonna stand over here and be mad. And that was really, really hard. Like I didn't like that. And so like I don't think Finin would ever really go that route. I think Finin is just too. I think Finin is very damaged. But I think he's like at heart, he just wants to do good.
I'm
He's a
really
sweet
excited
boy.
to see. I'm really excited to see where you go with him and where the sort of the story leads him. Especially
am I.
now that we have a bit more of a backstory as to why we kind of came in through his like angsty teen years without any sort of background as to why he was so angsty and why he was so uncertain.
Mhm.
I know that when the first couple episodes, I was like, what's this kid's deal? Like, why is he always so pissed off and unhappy? But now that there's a bit more
Oh, gosh.
backstory, I mean, it's like you come in and it's difficult to understand, right? Everyone else has
Mhm.
got positives in their lives. You know, we started the thing, Nepentha's getting married, and you know, Callie has Kamea, and then you were just kind of like, I'm fighting with my patron. And so it was kind of like, what is going on? But now the backstory, it makes a lot more sense, you know, and I think we forget as well because, you know, we don't talk about it very often. We forget about his age, and we forget, you know, the guy who looks most like a dad on the screen is playing a 15-year-old boy. So, yeah, I'm super excited to see where it goes.
Thanks for joining us, Adam.
It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
We'll have to have you back
Nice.
at some point.
I'd love that.
There's
I'm so
never
excited to
enough
like
time.
you know, like 6 months from now or whatever, and we start bringing the cast back.
Yes.
And it's like, so how have they changed since the last time you were in chatWater? Like that's
Oh my gosh.
like this is just the foundation. I'm so excited for like where we go from here.
I've been sketching out the show notes. I usually Tim makes fun of me. I've sketched out a brief arc of the show notes. I'm about 12 episodes ahead from where we are now. And
You finally got to my next episode?
No, not even. I've just got to Matthew coming back.
Jeez, man.
So, because I think there's going to be so much, that like the characters will change and stuff even in their backstories, current stories, the stuff. I think because a lot of people when they start watching us, they're like, oh, well, these characters are like level 14, but they're only 21 episodes that they've streamed. What's happening? And we're like, chatWater, we're getting there very slowly because like we even started playing as level 5s and finishing the level 8. So we've had, 2.5 years of just building story, and there's so many layers, and I think it's so cool that we have the opportunity to go through that, and I can't wait to hear about Finin's kind of journey when we get you back.
Exciting stuff. Well, thanks for having me on. It was a
problem.
pleasure. Thanks everyone for watching.
Join us on Saturday is our next stream at 8 p.m. for the regular Blackwater stream.
For the God Brawl!
It's gonna be good.
Ooh, I've been thinking about it all week.
See, the thing is, everyone's planning out this PvP thing. I'm foreseeing Finin having to jump over the fucking railing because some fucking dragon attacks, and we're all gonna have to be in there. Like
I said that to Tim. I think it was
I
like
have suspicions.
literally yesterday. We were sitting in our backyard watching our little toddler play in the backyard, and I looked at him and I was like, something's gonna come up.
He can't. He didn't.
It's gonna
Tim
be
can't help himself.
task. It's
He
gonna
can't
be
help
the money
himself.
hole.
Tim fundamentally cannot allow us to have nice sessions.
I don't think that's true. I think this is the one time that we're going to actually have a nice, like, sanctioned, fun thing. And we're all just too scared. We're like very scared because of all the bad things that have happened with Blackwater. But speaking of task, people have been asking a lot of questions about the money hole.
Money hole.
So what we're going to do is next chatwater session, we are going to talk all about the money hole, where that comes from, why we're all so up in arms about that.
That's great because I don't know. Like, I actually don't know, but I hear the phrase money hole, and I'm like, oh yeah, great.
We're going to talk a lot about that. And then Sean, you better be paying attention and do some deep diving back into episodes, because we're going to start talking about a bunch of NPCs and who they are in the world. So,
because look, here's the thing: there's some NPCs that we just haven't introduced, but like occupy a lot of real estate in Letters' mind. But I was just like, I can't talk about the fucking taco merchant ice cream sandwich person love triangle because we just haven't introduced that.
We're gonna
in
talk
canon, but they are my favorite characters.
Yes, we're gonna talk about a few of our favorite. The
We
episodes
haven't talked about Duomo. We haven't talked about fucking. We barely touched on
when
Tad.
Duomo was in the crowd.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and
So
it was a
good.
good choice picking you as the champion.
There's Jayla, the fucking half orc. Oh my god. There's those two enchanters that I always get them confused. One likes me and the other does not.
Torren. Well, we'll get there. We're chatwater. We're gonna get there next week.
Look, I'm gonna you doinked.
Oh yeah, Torna. Hell yeah.
We'll talk about all of these wonderful
Hell
NPCs
yeah,
and
dude.
we'll throw around a bunch of names and you probably
Hell
won't
yeah,
remember.
dude.
Hell yeah, dude. But we're gonna do that next week. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We will see you. And Adam, it's a tradition on the show at the end of the night. We don't do the ghost salute. We blow kisses to everyone. So
right, yes, I was here last session. So lots of love.
Do it, Sean.
I don't think I want to do it today.
Sean.
Blow a kiss, Sean. We're not
You know
leaving
what,
until
I'm
you
gonna-
blow a kiss.
Sean.
I'm gonna give an extra one for Sean.
I'll kiss myself.
Sean.
One kiss, Sean. Just blow one kiss.
Wait.
Oh!